Oh, Sally, I'm so excited we get to meet today to have this discussion. Really, I think this is so key in moving forward and helping empower parents to be able to intervene in some of the most destructive things that we come across. And the whole idea for this kind of podcast actually came from, I was meeting with a school official, and that official had gone through our Preparing Our Kids for Success. And as you know, that's a truancy intervention program that really is all about empowering parents to help raise kids' grades and then also bring them and make sure they're going to school on a regular basis. And so, but with this school official, when I met with them and we trained them kind of on what the curriculum was about, one of the feedbacks that I got from her, which I think was really accurate, was she said, this is great for a lot of kids, but what about the families that are dealing with anxiety? Because that's such a huge thing. You know, as a parent, sometimes you feel bad for, you know, well, how can I punish my kid? They're afraid to go to school for maybe some valid reasons, even sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we all kind of this whole conversation, I think, started. And the reality is, I think our kids are dealing with so much anxiety just across the board. And I don't know where that's come from. And maybe that's where you can kind of help us with a little bit. But, you know, if you look in history, like in the War of 1812, we had a 12-year-old that commanded Navy ships. So tell me, I mean, we're in a different place where I don't know if I would ever think my 12-year-old would be responsible enough and courageous enough to be able to do that. So we've kind of come to this place where anxiety is such a huge thing with our kids. So Sally, what are you seeing out there when it comes to our children dealing with anxiety? Kind of what are you seeing?
Oh, I just really appreciate having this opportunity to talk with you. I do. I absolutely agree. This is an amazing opportunity for the two of us to be able to share some things. I think where anxiety is concerned, we just see so much that these kids have access to at such younger ages that it makes it so overwhelming that they're getting some of this information from the world sooner than their brains are really ready to receive it. And so we're seeing a lot, certainly COVID-19 and the pandemic didn't help, but we're really seeing a lot of these kids who have had access to a lot of information at young ages. And what do we do to try to protect them? How do we try to help them assimilate what they're seeing and learning in media, particularly? And so when we know that so much is accessible and we yet know that their brains are not ready to receive it, it makes sense that fear or that anxiety would be an instinctive response. And so what we've learned is that that's okay. You know, like we can't stop the world from churning with more information, but what we can do is to teach parents how to be more equipped to handle that when your child does start to face some levels of fear or anxiety.
So let me ask you this. What would be some examples of some information that is creating anxiety in our kids where maybe 30 years ago that information wasn't present? What would be, I guess I can think of social media and immediate feedback from friends on you put your picture out there, and if you don't get a like, you know, then you feel rejected. Is that what you're talking about, or what would you say?
Well, I think that is for teens. I think when we talk about younger children, preschool, kindergarten age, where we see a lot of separation anxiety, a lot of it has to do with the parents and how much they're really able to cope and trust that their kid will be okay, even if they're going into a school or a preschool. A lot of anxiety comes from the parents really trusting these systems or institutions that are going to do well to take care of my child and keep them safe. And so when you have a parent who doesn't necessarily believe it's safe enough that my kid will be okay in these, school settings, then it automatically starts a lot of ways that parents are accommodating their child's behavior. But then what we see later, and so that's in the preschool, kindergarten phase, what we also see is that they have access to iPads and computers, and they are used heavily within the school settings. And so they have access to learning lots of things and having great exposure to that, but that also means that it's not filtered. So they could get access to pornography. They could get access to violence. They could get access to how people treat one another badly. And so that makes a huge difference for a child who may feel vulnerable or insecure to what do I do now that I've seen this, that this exists in the world? I don't have the confidence to know how to handle it. When we handle in things in terms of teenagers, that's where they have devices. So now they've got their own personal phone all the time. It's not necessarily taken from them. It's used, and parents see that as a very keen tool to keep their child safe. Knowing where they are, understanding what access they have to their friends and the contacts, that they're getting into as they become teenagers. The thing about it is what we see in teens, we don't necessarily see in school age. We see with teens that they're doing a lot of comparing themselves. How much are they liked? How much are they really interested in me? How much am I being seen and known? That's a kind of our coming out phase in adolescence of trying to be seen and known for who we are. And so when you put things out in media and it's not well received by your peers, or you're trying to compare that I'm not as pretty as, or as thin as, or as smart as, or as athletic as these other people that are already out there that are a part of my peer group, it becomes a lot more in terms of the intensity of trying to do things with perfection and levels of criticism and dealing with performance. So it changes, it evolves over time.
So you said something that I think it kind of triggered even a thought, was that I feel like parenting has shifted from, you had back in the 70s, you had what we call latchkey kids,
Right.
where they were just, parents were working and weren't able to come home and they were on their own for a period of time. And now we've shifted to where safety in many ways, which is a good thing, is the key, or what a lot of parents pursue.
Yeah.
And so you look at our playgrounds and they've got rubber mats now, so
Yes.
kids don't fall and hurt themselves,
Right.
And so there's been this shift to where now everything is about safety. But I think in some ways, maybe we've gone a little too far, where now it's not just safety, it's even overprotection from children being able to fail and being okay with that.
Absolutely.
And so, I feel like that being okay to fail is part of the learning process. And so when we take that away from our kids and their ability to experience some pain and things like that, it really hurts their development. And so do you feel, how does that play into this whole anxiety piece?
Absolutely. 100%. I think either it's a sense of overprotection, or you'll see parents who are very demanding that they expect their kids to do more than they really developmentally can. And so it's learning how to be present and nurture where my child is, not expecting them, well, you're 16, you should be able to do X, Y, and Z. Or, now you're a kindergartner, you should be able to go to school. Sometimes we just need kids to have more time and nurture, but not overprotect. And overprotection is where I see that as being the parent's quality of life is being impaired for the child's life. So things like the child may have things like stomach ache, very common, and not wanting to go to school. Oh, my tummy hurts. I don't think I want to go to school. The parent has to have the differentiation and understanding to know, okay, am I seeing this as a part of my child's anxiety, or is there truly something here that needs to be attended to physically? And a lot of times the child will start to melt down as the parent starts to lean into, I think you're okay, let's go to school. So then when they amp up with more emotion, then the parents want to continue to compensate for that emotion. They don't know what to do. And especially if a child who's going to school regularly and then all of a sudden decides to stop going or to stop being involved in certain things, parents start to panic, like, what's going on? What do we do? So they'll either go, oh, it's okay, you don't have to go, which then gives more power to the anxiety, or they turn around and say, demand it and say, get out, get up, get going, we're doing.
Yeah.
Right. Which to me, both of those don't necessarily lean into the child's ability to know how to navigate what they're experiencing.
Yeah. So that's kind of, we like to think of that as even, parents try to control versus influence.
Mhm.
And I think, learning how, and I think that's the struggle for all of us as parents is there is, it's said time and time again, there's no manual for parenting, right? And so if we've never experienced this, there really is a struggle that comes with, how do I help my kid? I feel bad because I know they're hurting. I know they're experiencing some pain, those kind of things. And I want to take that away. But really the question is, what's the most healthy way to do that? Not being the child's almost, I want to say, medicine they take every time to heal the pain, but teaching them healthy habits that can then bring healing for themselves and they can carry into life longer down the road. Correct?
Oh, yes. So well said. Yeah. I think the thing that when you were talking about that overprotection, it's instinctive. We're parents. We want our kids to be able to have access to knowing that, we're here. We want to protect. We want to make sure you're okay and are safe. The problem is that sometimes the parents will continue with that method and then it becomes a part of the child's expectation that they will be, like you said,
so it's the medicine.
Yeah. You'll compensate for me. You'll make sure that I don't have to feel that. Okay. And then the parents start to lose their quality of life as a means to trying to compensate for their child's quality of life. And they think, well, if I just do this, it'll get better. And what they realize is it doesn't. It just continues to escalate into something else. So what we try to say, and this is where the method that we're talking about is called SPACE. It's called Supportive Parenting for Anxious Childhood Emotions. It's a specific method meant to teach parents how to manage, regardless of their child's response, but knowing how to set something up with acceptance and confidence. Those two aspects are really key to a SPACE method, to have it being really well suited for the child in their developmental age and stage. So you wouldn't do the same type of response to a teenager that you would do to a 5 or 6-year-old. So SPACE has a way of trying to navigate, where are we at in the child's development? What do we see the parent is doing to accommodate some of that behavior? And what can we do to turn towards by helping the parent come with, I see you. I'm confident that you can do this. I accept that this is hard. And we can work at this together.
So, Sally, I think probably one of the greatest challenges for parents that are dealing with kids with anxiety, it's the battle, yes, of their child has anxiety. But I think it's also the shame, the guilt, the things like that, that the powerlessness that parents feel.
Yeah.
Like, how can you speak to that? Like, what are you seeing with parents as they come with this challenge? And then maybe we can even kind of begin to get into a little bit of the hope. What does it bring? So can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the over accommodating or just accommodating behavior starts to break down quality of life. Okay. It breaks down the family quality of life. Siblings start to get annoyed because this one child just can't seem to get it together to let the whole family have an enjoyable moment because the anxiety is what's so present. And so what we see sometimes is parents will start to identify their children like, well, I have an anxious child. No, you have a child who is suffering with anxiety. And in so doing, looking at this as a mental health issue that really can be treated, it can be taken and looked at and given to something greater, right? Rather than that the whole family or the parents have to suffer for the fact that the child is suffering with anxiety. And so the context that we like to see is that we can get the child in treatment. We have means to do that and use lots of tools, things like play therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy. There's a lot of things that we could do. But if the child refuses the amount of care that they could be given for their anxiety diagnosis, we have a way to get to the job regardless whether the child comes to therapy or not. So this is what makes it so different.
Yeah, I love that because I think that's where many parents get caught. And this is the barrier is that, well, how do I get my child to want this? because they don't.
They
That's
don't.
what, anxiety
Mhm.
is one of those things where it's kind of like a rubber band. You stretch it and you keep it stretched and it's good. You
Mhm.
can kind of maybe fight through it, but then maybe something happens and that rubber band you self-protect. And so you say,
Mhm.
you know what, I'm not going to experience that again. So you stop stretching the rubber band and then it
Mhm.
becomes tighter until it's locked in. And so you're going to have a child who is not going to want to participate in what you're doing.
Absolutely. Mhm.
So to me, what you're talking about is really parent empowerment.
Yes.
Like
Mhm.
it's not just them now relying on you as a clinician to because you've been trained.
Mhm.
And I think that's
Yeah.
kind of maybe a shift that our culture has made is that
Mm.
parents have become disempowered. They've
Yes.
felt like
Mhm.
everyone else is more qualified
Yeah.
to lead their child when their child needs
Mhm.
healing and wholeness. And
Mhm.
certainly, we in our programs, we recommend parents need to be connected with a mental health care professional. And that's why
Yeah.
I love
Mhm.
our
I do
partnership so
too.
much. I don't have all the answers for parents and kids. You've got some
Mhm.
clinicians that can help with the things that we
Mhm.
don't address.
Yes.
And so I really love this piece about,
Mm.
hey, it's really about how can parents lead their children
Mhm.
in a empowering way when they are hit with something like anxiety.
Oh,
So
yeah.
can you talk more about that?
Oh, yeah. I think everything that you just say echoes in my spirit about it, right? Like, I think that parents realizing that they are the greatest influence in their child's life when the media and the world says you're not, and we have all these other experts that know what they're doing better, but they don't know the daily life of the child. They don't know the
Yeah.
nuances of what trips them up and what gets them all caught up in their emotions, right?
Yeah.
That's where parents have to be plugged in. They have to make a choice to turn towards their child and observe it. You don't have to fix it. There are ways that it can be addressed, but you need to be willing to address it. And I think that's part of this that parents will do more sometimes to think, well, it's just a phase. They'll get through it. It will be okay. Or they go, I can't do that. They just get so violent. They get so combative. They just get so oppositional and defiant with me. I can't even get anywhere, right? With what,
Yeah.
I'm trying to do. And so what we try to do is to set it up with that kind of coaching. That's what I love about Parenting Solutions is that you guys do so much that you have material and you coach them through the material with the specificity of what their child needs, right? It's
Yeah.
not a one size fits all. We do the same with the SPACE method as well, that we want to be able to take in, assess that the child really fits the criteria for anxiety. So we do assess that through the parents, depending on age and stage, or with the child. We want to know how much that the parent really is able to see that they fit a diagnosable event. And then what can we do if the child says, well, I'm not coming? You can't make me do this. And we go, okay, well, I'm going to be in it. And so we try to tell parents, like, it's okay if they choose not to. But what we have is a way to say, hey, child, you give it one time. If you say it's not working, that's okay. But we're going to, as parents, to try to look at how we can be best for you. And so sometimes kids actually like that better, where they know that they're not the problem child, where they know that the parents are actually equally involved, wanting to do what's in the best interest of the whole family, not just to single them out.
Yeah, I love even what you're talking about. I think oftentimes I like to look at these challenges, whether it be trauma, whether it be mental health, as a mountain, right? And they really are a mountain. And it's part of our journey. And it's not that we've done bad necessarily. I mean, certainly we can make our own choices that lead us to bad outcomes, right? But there's sometimes we just come to a mountain in life and we got to climb the mountain.
Yeah.
And so, but the problem is that with children, they don't have the skills or the understanding of what a cliff might be.
Amen.
And so
Yeah.
they may come up to the cliff and they may say, oh, that's pretty cool. And then they fall off the cliff. And so the reality is that anxiety is something like that. It's like a cliff in their journey up the mountain.
Absolutely.
And so what I love is by empowering parents and helping give them the skills, they're the ones that are going to be able to bring the bumpers, if you will, the guardrails to keep their child from falling off. So, that's what I hear you saying is, hey, we've really seen success that parents can be those guardrails so that their child can be successful in moving forward and getting up the cliff or the mountain, if you will. So let me ask you this. What would you say are some of the biggest mistakes that parents make when they're trying to deal with anxiety with their child?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, two things is I think they deny the fact that it's real. They don't want to believe that my child is really struggling more than I wish them to. So that takes a hurdle unto itself. But once that reality has come in that this is taking too much of time and energy to try to compensate, they start to move and go, okay, so what do I do? Where do I go? And they're willing to see mental health. I mean, we see a lot of parents who are willing to do that. They just don't see themselves as the change agent.
Yeah.
That they're the ones that we're more invested with you guys than we are some ways with your own child. Now, that doesn't mean that the child doesn't get equipped. And so this is where one of the things that we see, depression, anxiety, okay, there's some ways life circumstances are going to bring these things. It's not that we're going to be able to bubble them away from it. In fact, we need to coach them. Here's what's happening. Here's how to manage it. This is what we're going to do to support you in it. And we're not going to look at this as just here's the pill. Here's the clinician who's going to fix my kid. We're looking this as we're all in this together. We want to do this for the greater understanding so that you're well equipped as an adult because there are lots of life challenges. Yeah.
It kind of goes back to them relying on us for the medicine versus them being able to make choices that bring health and wholeness into their lives. Right.
Yeah. And I think sometimes too, Rob, we get into this place of expert must mean that I'm a perfectionist. I should know perfectly how to be the parent I'm supposed to be for my kid. That is not what this is about. It's about presence. It's about being present to your child and being able to say, it's okay. I don't know, but I'm going to go figure it out. And we're going to work at this together. And that you don't have to suffer and we don't have to suffer every day with wondering how we're going to make it through another day with anxiety at our door. It doesn't have to take over. But yet we can't ignore it and we can't just say it goes away. So what's the healthy balance that we're in this together and that we have a child who's suffering with anxiety, not that they're an anxious child.
Yeah, I love that. And I even hear what I hear you saying is sometimes as parents, there's an anxiety in our own life and in our own heart that if we try something and it doesn't work, then things are going to end up worse than if we just did nothing.
Yeah.
So do you have any thoughts about that?
So the do nothing experience largely is the parents that want to believe that it'll just go away. And it's okay. And sometimes they get lucky and that phases out, right? Because their brains start to mature. We really see a lot in the science when the adolescent brain is starting to come on. The limbic brain, which is where all the emotional centers are coming on first. The rest of the right and left hemispheres are latent. So they come in and really don't fully develop until our mid-20s. So now what we've got is a highly emotional child, highly sensitive child that doesn't have all of the logic and reason and language to know how to navigate all these emotions that are just turning on. Kind of like that movie Inside Out, right? Where you see Riley.
I love that movie.
Yeah. It's a great movie where she starts to realize like all these emotions are really intense and now they're nuanced. It's not just happy, mad, sad, glad. Now it's like depressed, anxious, worried, embarrassed, humiliated, right? Like we can't bubble wrap our kids from shame. We can't help them. In fact, it's a part of our experience that we're trying to get them to know how to navigate.
Yeah.
Anxiety is a form of helping kids navigate.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that you going back to your original question, like what are some of the components of what parents are doing to compensate? One is they're over accommodating. And they continue to give permission to things by saying, like
even when they don't mean to, right?
Exactly.
They have their best intentions in mind.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Like, come here, poor baby. We'll figure it out. It's okay. You don't have to do that. Okay, that's one of the common ones. Then there's this other side of like fix it or rescue in some ways. Like I'm going to become, again, this expert of trying to mythologize everything and get my kid out of this thing. Like it's all programmatic. That doesn't work either. And then sometimes they take it personally. Like, parents are like, I've done something really wrong. And now they're personalizing it that you're making my life awful.
Yeah.
What are you doing to
yeah.
me? It's a personal affront.
Yeah.
Also, this idea of being inconsistent, that's what we see where a parent will go in with acceptance and not having the confidence that their child can manage. And that we want to see that there is a combination of acceptance and confidence that go in hand, that we're not just saying, it's okay, I accept that this is hard. No, I know it's hard and I know you can do it. So it's not like you can't do it.
Right.
And it's not that we only say that you can, because then kids don't find the belief systems in that. They really want to see that you get where I'm at. You know how hard this is for me. And you, even though I don't have the confidence to believe that, you as my parent on the bumpers that you talk about, you believe it. And so even if they don't like it, if the feeling doesn't come to say, oh, thank God they're right there for me, the parents have the belief system that it's going to be all right because we know we're doing the right process in a method that will do this without making it overly programmatic. Yeah. It's relational.
And so I hear you talking about confidence of the child, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of where you're going, is building in a confidence that, hey, you can do this.
Yes.
What about parents? Because I find the greatest maybe barrier to parents intervening is the initial process and being confident with that. What I see in parents oftentimes is a lot of the times they focus on their child for the outcome. And if the outcome isn't there, then that it hurts their confidence in their parenting structures, rules, those kind of things. And then, consistency is all about confidence. If you don't have confidence that you brush your teeth every day, your teeth won't fall out, you're not going to keep brushing your teeth every day, right? But if you do, or you believe that your coworker doesn't want to smell your bad breath in the morning, you're going to brush your teeth every day because you have confidence, And so how do we get parents, to really embrace? That's what I try to teach parents is, listen, you got to stop focusing on your child's behavior.
Right.
And you got to become confident in the things that you're doing, because when you're confident and you're consistent, then change is going to come.
Absolutely.
So tell me, can you, even with the space program, tell me a little bit more, how does that, how do you build that initial confidence in parents? Or is it just a thing where most parents get to the end of themselves, they're so tired and they're so worn out that they're like, I'll do anything out of desperation. And I kind of want to talk to both parents because, we don't ever want parents to get to that point. Right. It's easier to treat cancer at stage 1 than it is stage 4, right? So we want early intervention. We want parents to get empowered early. How do you speak to those, first those parents that maybe they're not as exhausted, but they need some confidence that, hey, I have, a part in this. And I really do think so. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a wonderful question. So what we tend to see, Rob, just is kind of, what you gave is the second part about parents really at their wits' end, and they just feel like I'm a bad parent and I just need this intervention. So it's kind of the same thing where we see sometimes it can be up to 7 years of really major distress before the parent or the spouse or whatever, when we see in treatment, will actually want to come and see counseling as a viable option. So by that point, yes, there is a willingness, And yes, there is also hesitancy because they feel by the point that they've come to somebody like me, they've tried everything.
Yeah.
And so that makes there's a
that
hurdle.
Can be a barrier
yeah,
there.
It can
Yeah.
make it harder. So
Yeah.
like you say, going to your first point, it's better to start it in stage 1 rather than waiting to stage 4, right? So a lot of times parents don't come to us until after their kids are out of school for like 4, 8, 16 weeks. Well, every day that the child isn't in school, let's say for any reason for that length of time, the parents are finding themselves, this is just the way it is. They're never going to go back to school, right? And what they don't realize is every day that their child is out of school is another day that the anxiety wins.
Yeah, it's that rubber band again,
It
right?
is.
It's not being stretched, so it's getting
Yep.
tighter and tighter. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the point where the child just has absolutely no confidence. And then I think the other thing that we've come to become more as a society is that we want reflections that reflect back to what we want.
Mhm.
So we expect that
Yeah.
you're going to want what I'm giving you. You're going to want
Yeah.
to have this be okay. You're going to
Yeah.
not blow up at me when I tell you I'm no longer going to do this in the same way X, Y, and
Yeah.
Z, right?
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is to say there has to be a distance. That's where we see the clinician coming alongside to help the parent going, we expected this.
Yeah.
It's on the right track.
That's so disorienting, isn't it?
It is because it feels like more chaos. Like, how could this possibly be bringing us back to some language that you were sharing about order? You know, how do we bring order out of chaos? It just feels like they're just blowing up at me even more to try to get what they want, right?
Yeah.
And we come in with that. The space method anticipates that. It makes sure that we know, hey, parent, this will get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
And then the better means that we have to stay consistent because it takes about 21 days to make a good habit and a new habit. And then it takes from that on, it takes 21 more days to keep the habit, right? At least.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is to bring instilling of, it's okay. We're not looking for your child to reflect that they're going to be okay with this. Some might, but more times than not, they're not going to be.
Yeah.
And we just need you to know that we're here for you and that we also have support teams. So we try to bring support teams around the families that are dealing with it. Grandparents, friends of the child, right? Ways that this can be done in not a way of shame, but more empowerment to be able to say that the parent and the child are not only in the battle zone together. There's more than that.
I love that because I've just so found that, you know, even in the programs that we teach, you know, we have a set curriculum, you know, we have what we call is like the skeleton of intervening in behaviors through the Parent Project Senior Program and our Loving Solutions program. But you know what? The parents are the ones who put the skin and the muscle on the skeleton, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's the tricky part because it's very easy to bring in a formula. It's very easy to bring in, this is what you do step by step. But when it doesn't feel right to you, it's very disorienting.
Absolutely.
And any change is never going to feel right.
Yeah.
You know, when you've been doing the same thing, the same pattern, you've got muscle memory, you've got emotional memory that's going to try to keep you doing that same stuff. Like it is never comfortable to change. So here you have this amazing dynamic where you have someone who doesn't want to change, you know, the child, and then you have you who wants to change, but you're still uncomfortable with it.
Right.
And so this is where I see the value of being able to connect with, you know, some of your clinicians is, okay, you have a program. Do you have some steps that have been shown to effectively intervene and help kids with anxiety? But when it doesn't look like the book said it did, or somebody else said it did, that's when the breakdown occurs.
Sure.
So can you talk a little bit more about how do your clinicians come alongside parents and kind of what's the process for that for parents?
Yeah. So great question. The process is about 8 sessions. Okay. When we look at a treatment cycle, it's about 12. So we give some room in there. So, but the method itself can be taught in about 8 sessions. Of course, it needs time to percolate. So what we would prefer is that the counselor is looked more as coach kind of like what you're doing with parenting solutions, right? We coach, we have the material, it's a
Right.
curriculum, but we are coaching you specifically
Yep.
for your child with anxiety.
We're helping you
Yes.
answer all those tough questions,
Exactly.
those barriers that
Absolutely.
seem to arise, those
Mhm.
kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's so lovely about it is that when we meet with them week to week, we try not to go when we're doing at least one cycle of this because there can be multiple things that are making the child anxious. So we try to go with the top 3 things that the parents are willing to make shifts in that are no longer going to be accommodations.
I love
and
that.
they can learn after the 3rd time in that cycle.
Yep.
We're really weaning ourselves away because they're starting to see the fruit of what's happening with that method. And so in the midst of that, it doesn't mean that we are that far away. In fact, we try to call like when we know that the child is going to make what we call as the announcement, that there's a specific point in time. It's about session 4 when the parent has written out with the clinician. We figured out where the accommodations of the parents are making, how we can announce to the child differently that this is how we're going to do that. And then the follow through happens. So then it's like, okay, what happened? We knew you were going to do this on Wednesday night. So we're calling Thursday morning. How'd that go? What was that like?
Oh, that's huge.
So it's way outside of just, in the given hour. We want those given hours because we need to be able to have time and room to teach and equip. But we also want to go outside of that. Our whole model, Rob, that's why space just makes so much sense for us as a team, is that we really want to give compassionate care. It's the core of who we are.
Yeah.
So even if it's not during the actual treatment hour, we want to go, hey, I'm going to be calling you. I want to check in about this. Tell me where things are at. What did you see as market improvement? If not, let's come back. Let's keep talking. Don't give up, but this is what we need to step into. Because we know it's an everyday event.
Yeah,
it's not just happens once a week.
Right.
So we're trying to be more ready to equip to come in and helping them even throughout the time that they're not in session.
Yeah, I love that so much. And it really is, that's why AA and NA, I think, has been so successful, it's that connection. It's being able to come, talk with people, connect on a regular basis, as opposed to just reading a book. And, and so having, and what I love about your organization too, is that, this is a process. And as things come up, as we kind of peel the onion, so to speak, we find that there's other things that may be driving the anxiety or maybe even as parents, no shame or guilt to any parent, but maybe there's issues in our own heart that have really, whether we experience trauma. And so, trauma is this mask that we look through the world through. And so we can be acting out of our own trauma that it becomes an accommodation for our child.
Absolutely.
And so,
because we've accommodated ourselves.
Exactly.
We're choosing not to go to those movies because I get panic. We choose not to do groups because we feel inadequate or insecure, the social anxieties that come up, or we just worry about everything all the time, all at once, and our kids pick up on that energy. They understand that. They're watching us, they're modeling that.
Oh, it's so funny. One of my daughters, she went over to her grandma's house, and there was this old, those hand pumps where you pump the water, and they had this old hand pump out there. So my mom, she just went out and she was like, I'm going to pump this and show her, and it's kind of, she's a little young. I don't know if she was 3 or 4 maybe at that time. Well, this was the first time she was exposed to a wasp because they started pumping the water. And this wasp came flying out and flying around him. So my mom, she picks her up and she starts running and she's like yelling, trying to wave this wasp. She didn't want her granddaughter to get, experience to be stung. Yeah. But then after that, since that moment, my daughter had a fear of bugs that would fly over her and things like that. Right. So it really is true that as parents, if there's not healing in our own heart, that sometimes that can be something we're passing on, and we don't mean to do it. No. I mean, but it just happens.
It does.
So do you see that, like, as parents come to you for help with their kids, where it really becomes healing, not just for their child, but it can be healing for the whole family.
Yeah, I think it's true. I think parents, that's why we assess them too a little bit, Rob. Like we really understand that they're there to help their child, but we are also trying to assess their depression, anxiety, risk, and trauma as well. Just take a snapshot and just to see how much are you just struggling with you, let alone trying to parent your child. And so that we could look at that as having somebody else could do the space method work, and then somebody else could in our team could be helping with the individual therapy that a parent might need. So we really just want to make sure that whatever they say is that problem, we'll start with where they're at. You know, if they say my child's the problem, the anxiety is too much, it's comparing the quality of my life. But we want to diagnostically take a peek at everything, right? Not just, we want to look at both parents. We want to look at the circumstances of what they see is going on in their child. We try to very hard, Rob, make them the experts. We are not the experts. We ask questions that just say, how are they sleeping? What have you noticed in their eating habits? Are they starting to withdraw from certain things that they really love to do? Have you noticed they're asking all kinds of questions? What about this? What about that? What if this happens? What if that happens? Help me, help me, help me, because I don't know if I trust that it's okay. It's going to be okay if I go to that birthday party or that event, you know, where I have to stand up and perform. You know, they get panicked sometimes. And it's just so normal. I really believe God made it as a protective mechanism, right? To keep us aware. But sometimes the anxiety can just turn on the volume so high and stay high that the child just can't compensate, can't figure out how to use those tools, and need a parent to be able to say, I know this is hard and I know you can do it. And we're going to be right here just waiting and looking and celebrating how much we know you can handle it.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, for Parenting Solutions, kind of our motto is empowering parents, creating hope, transforming lives. You know, I really believe that parents, they have the ability to be able to intervene if they have the skills. And like I said, there's no shame in the things that come along. We were not all equipped to deal with all the situations that we've had to, you know, the challenges that have come along. But just like that mountain, we can get over the mountain. And so I love that. And I want to ask you, so what would be the process for a parent, you know, if they're interested in kind of becoming part of this space? Can I call it a family? That's what we call it. When our parents go through our, we call it part of the, you know, Groff and Associates family, part of the Parenting Solutions family. What would they do to kind of get the process going? And I know finances are always something, and it, you know, Parenting Solutions, we always say we don't want finances to ever be a barrier for any parent to come through. So we have scholarships, we have different things, but I know you have different ways of doing things. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are 3 clinicians on our team that are specifically trained on the SPACE method. So that's really important. We don't have all the team yet trained, but it doesn't mean that we can't continue to get them equipped and get in quickly. So we have clinicians where we say, if you get to us, we'll get you an appointment within the next 7 business days.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah,
not a lot of organizations are able to do that.
Yeah, we want that to be very accessible. We also want it to be affordable. So for us, we're in all major commercial, Medicaid, and Medicare plans. So we have to look at what those benefits look like for what the parent might have, and we can use those resources rather than tapping into their private pay. But we do have private pay options as well. So we don't want anybody to be turned away, Rob. We really want to make sure that they know we're accessible, we're available, and we're affordable. Those are our top guarantees that when you come here, you're not going to be left behind or be dismissed or not get to the right professional. And so as we continue to move into this, as more people kind of turn on to this SPACE method, which we will be training a lot of our own team to be able to do that. So there won't be any gap, right? But we want to make sure that these 3 clinicians that we have are going to be able to stand in it very quickly and to be able to do that treatment cycle as needed. So we have to do an onboarding process. We need to get those resources figured out. We need to figure out what the time of day that's best. How do we do this consistently? We try to ask, hey, can you give us 6 consecutive sessions, if it's once a week or once every other week where we're already plugged in and you have a set time and a set opportunity to be with that parenting counselor, coach, however you want to version that, but to be able to go through the assessment process and get busy with the method.
So let me ask, how does a parent pay for this?
So the parent, we usually look at their resources in terms of their benefits. If they don't have insurance, we try to reduce that fee and we try to make it as palpable as possible. We've also seen very good luck with the school settings where the school will pay a portion out of their funding and their foundational monies to help compensate for the parents to get some of that as well. So it may be like for our local school settings, the parent may pay like $50 and then the school pays the other $50 and we're given so many sessions. And it's specifically trying to get them to understand and learn this method for their child. So there's a lot of ways that we can do this and be able to get that resourced.
And you do take insurance and Medicaid?
Yeah, Medicaid and Medicare and all the commercial plans. So we want to make sure that we are using that. It's considered a diagnosable event when you have a child that suffers with anxiety. So we want to make sure, even if the child is not getting actual treatment for whatever refusal or whatever the circumstances are, we can give the parents and use their resources and their benefits to do that.
Yeah, I love this. And so this is way, just to kind of bring things back, our Preparing Our Kids for Success class is all about empowering parents to deal with out of control behaviors. And so I would encourage any parent, even if a child has anxiety, to use this, to come to that class, and then they are going to gain access to your training, which we're doing soon. And we're going to record that so that they can have that online and on demand. So can you talk a little bit about your training and kind of what are we going to be talking about? What are some of the nuts and bolts a little bit?
So some of the nuts and bolts, when we're going to do the one that you and I have coming again in January of 2026, it's going to be a more condensed version. This will be a way for parents to have a good takeaway, but it may not be all the nuances that are tied to specifically for that child. But here's what we're going to look at. We're really going to look at what can we do to increase support. How do we do this in such a way to start charting the ways that the parents are accommodating their child? Where do we start to pick a target? That's collaborative between the parent to the clinician as to how do we pick, what are we going to do as a start to be able to see that we're no longer going to choose to be accommodating.
So you're talking about the target being the anxiety. What type of anxiety or what fear?
It's not so much the fear. It's what the parent is doing to say that the fear is there. So for example, I have a stomach ache. Oh yeah, I know you do. And guess what? You can handle it. We're going to go to school anyway. We're going to get you some breakfast. It's going to be okay. Versus I have a stomach ache. Please don't make me go. Please don't make me go. I know it's really hard. And so I think the idea of how we get to a target of where the parent may have been in agreement before to give them school refusal and they don't go to school, or they have been in agreement to do things. We've even seen parents who have done hand washing just to accommodate their child's being, kind of fear of germs, right? So they'll overcompensate by saying, see, look at my hands. They're all nice and clean. Well, we're not going to do that anymore because we're going to say to the child, it's okay. I wash my hands today and that's all we need to do.
I
right?
like that. Yeah.
So there just depends on the level of what the child is experiencing and where we are watching for what the parents are doing, the parents more than the child. How are they compensating for that?
I love that.
The other thing is how do we get it as a meaningful problem? So it has to be something for space to really work, that it has to be something that happens like 2 to 3 times a week. So it needs to have some level where they see themselves accommodating with some level of frequency. It's not just an infrequent event. It's like every time my child goes to cross country, practice, this happens. Or every time that this, 2 to 3 times a week, they refuse to do these certain things with this group. So we're trying to look at it as the parents assessing, is this truly something that is harming their child? We don't want to set the child up for things that would truly might be harmful, like bullying or things that are setting them up to fail. We're trying to look at it as saying, this is safe. We know it's safe. Yeah. It's okay. We need to move forward.
Yeah.
So once we get that and we make the plan, then the announcement is the big deal. It's really where the clinician and the parent are working together of how are we scripting this? And it's literally a script that the parent reads to their child that's specific to the ways that they're no longer accommodating
I
that
love that
behavior.
because we do that in parent project programs as well. And I do think it's so important because the way you frame a conversation can have a huge effect on where that conversation goes. Right?
Absolutely.
So
yeah. And I've had parents and, even with adult children, people who have kids who are neurodivergent, may have autism, maybe ADHD, maybe it works really well for, it doesn't really matter the age and stage. What matters is it's a parent-child relationship and what is the parent doing to give that accommodating to their kid and allows the anxiety to persist.
Yep.
And they're not learning that they can manage that.
Yeah.
Finally, it's just then when we're at the end of it is just if there's any additional targets that the parents have identified that they want to work on, that we continue to cycle through. What's the next script? What's the next way that we're holding steadfast and being consistent about what we see as that success?
Yeah. I love that. And it's that's just the way we learn, right? We start from the beginning. There's no shame in not knowing what you don't know. And you start and you build and you have relationships to help power you through those tough times, those times of disorientation, those kind of things. And then you implement it. And then things don't always look or feel right. And then you're supported in that. And then as things improve, then you can work on other behaviors and other maybe fears that weren't so serious, if you will, or life-changing.
Well, and we see these kids being able to prove to themselves that they have the internal confidence, right? Like, I don't just need my parent to be the medicine for what I need. Because they're starting to see changes with some of the targets that we start with. And they start to see that it's a possibility that I can actually do this without mom or dad. Like, we've had kids who won't even go upstairs without a parent. They won't choose to go to the bathroom without every light being on in the house. They won't, there's just a lot of ways that they will compensate. And the parents will go, okay, well, I've made sure all the lights are on. And then they'll ante up with, but I can't flush the toilet because I don't like the sound. It makes me very worrisome. So now the parent's flushing the toilet, keeping all the lights on, going through the behaviors. I mean, it's amazing how just it's subtle, but it gets sicker and it becomes more problematic. And then parents are like, I can't get my kid to go to the bathroom at all,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Take a shower, do whatever, because they won't afford that.
Yeah.
So I think it's starting to get the child to see that they too can be confident. So then the subsequent targets are not nearly so over, having to work over to get there.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
So how can parents reach out to you, Sally?
Yeah. So the best ways to reach out to us, there's a couple of methods. You can certainly go to our website at groffandassociates.com and we have a contact form. So we easily look at all of our web inquiries and we look within 24 hours. We're going to be calling you back to try to figure out what we can do to get you to a therapist within those next 7 days, onboarding with whatever resources financially they have. The other thing that I failed to mention is that they can use HSA, FSA monies, pre-tax dollars for this as well. So we take all forms of that. Then I think after that, once we get that done, then we start to do the diagnostic work. Where do we start to learn that this kiddo is really a fit for this? The parents are really a fit for this. We've already taken that intake. We're already trying to figure out what that next right step needs to be. So once that happens and the onboarding happens, we really can just join into the process. So not only is it our website, but we also have our phone. You can call us at 317-474-6448. You press 1, you get to our gal Jess, and she starts to take off with all that onboarding process as well. Email works, our contact form, our phone, any of those that we try to be here. We're Monday through Friday. We're 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. with our office staff, but we have clinicians that work well into the evening. So even if we don't have upfront staff to be able to welcome them in because it's after hours, clinicians work up until 8 o'clock at night because we want to make sure that we're not missing parents and their time and, their schedules.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing
thank
this
you.
and this conversation. And once again, parents, you can reach out to us at 317-399-5332. That's the number for Parenting Solutions, or visit our website at parentingsolutionsnow.org. We would love to support you. We have parent programs for ages as young as 3 up to 18. So just to help encourage you and empower you to deal with out of control behaviors in your home, or behaviors that you're seeing that you feel like, this is not good. And if it keeps growing, it may put us in a bad place as a family. And so we love even those parents where you're not experiencing, let's see, like we talked about, that stage 4 behavior, but you've got some stage 1 and stage 2. We want to support you. So enroll in one of our parenting solutions programs. So we'd love to have you. All right, Sally, anything before we close out that you would like to add, or anything to share?
So nice. No, I feel like, Rob, just thank you. It was just such a pleasure to get to talk to you. And I just really hope that we get more families involved. I think we have an amazing opportunity to really come alongside Hoosiers here in our state to really help them not to feel that they're walking these things alone. So
I agree. That's probably one of the number one things that when parents get together that I hear is, it's nice to know I'm not alone, because we are struggling with that. And so I love that we can support parents, both of us, to empower them to be able to make changes in their home. So thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks.